News we are tracking, MIM's Owaisi has used Jallikattu struggle to slam unified civil code and make a case for triple talaq. The AIMIM leader says that Jallikattu protests are an example of how a uniform civil code cannot be imposed on people. He calls for a similar agitation by the Muslim community to reject the UCC and ensure triple talaq is not scrapped. Let's go across to my colleague Madhav Das, who's joining us live with further details. Good morning, Madhav. We're looking at how Owaisi has taken a cue from the Jallikattu protests and urging community to come out against the UCC and in favor of triple talaq. But the fact is that several women from within the Muslim community have stood up against the triple talaq and want to see gender equality.
Well, absolutely, and that's why those comments are extremely, of course, going to be controversial, because they're going to be perceived as being extremely insensitive to the rights of women, of course, half the population of India. And that's why, in fact, the kind of statement that, we've seen coming in from Assaduddin Owaisi is bound to create a large amount of controversy, not just from political opponents, but even those who would speak out for women's rights and other activists. So clearly, of course, Assaduddin Owaisi, by linking Jallikattu, saying that both are, what his entire argument is that both are cultural practices which in some ways are being threatened by various sections of society and those who are progressive thinking. But clearly, of course, at some level or the other, comparing Jallikattu to triple talaq is going to be seen as an extremely regressive sort of comparison, because of the sheer numbers of the people really against whom triple talaq works. It is, of course, something that is even being heard in the ethics code at this point in time. Assaduddin Owaisi, while is entitled to express whatever he wants, linking Jallikattu to women's rights in the form of triple talaq is bound to stir a huge political controversy as well.
But what is Owaisi really talking about? Because the government has never spoken of imposing triple talaq, I beg your pardon, a UCC on the people. The fight is really about gender equality, and the government, in fact, has also released a questionnaire with the Law Commission to have a consensus amongst people. So what is Owaisi really talking about here?
Well, of course, so for Assaduddin Owaisi, it is political season, so he will, of course, have to position himself as being seen of speaking out against the government. That position being taken by Owaisi is, of course, understandable given the kind of politics that Owaisi does practice. But the fact is this, that the government writing to the Law Commission asking that the entire uniform civil code be revisited and really whether it can be implemented, be revisited. The fact that Law Commission has already sent out questionnaires to various stakeholders and state governments and so on and so forth, demanding their responses on this issue, means that the entire process, as far as the Law Commission's own end is concerned, has already begun, in terms of its submitting a report to the government, which will be the first stage in the government considering really what its further stand would be in terms of its actual implementation. So obviously, Assaduddin Owaisi want to be seen opposing this particular move of the government, but while his opposition is something that has been there in the past as well, this new linking of Jallikattu to this particular aspect is something that is new, and that's why it's bound to be controversial.
And let's talk about the politics behind it all. Of course, the BJP, like we spoke with Madhav, is slamming this particular move. In fact, they're also calling this comparison slightly bizarre. But interesting to note what the Congress had to say. The Congress says that just before elections, Owaisi begins to speak, and actually he's doing so on the behest of the Bharatiya Janata Party to polarize really the atmosphere before election. Now, that's a little going too far, isn't it?
Well, this has been the stand of the Congress in the past as well. We've seen leaders of the Congress say that Assaduddin Owaisi is only, a sort of a proxy for the BJP in terms of, going ahead and polarizing votes in society, while BJP, may polarize one set of votes, Owaisi does another. This is an argument that has been put forth by several opposition parties, including the Congress in the past as well. But the big question is this, that certainly, of course, it is political season, and certainly, of course, within less than a month, we're going to be seeing the actual polls that various states have, in fact, just over about 2 weeks, in fact, for several states as well. So clearly, of course, Owaisi positioning himself is not being seen as something that is unusual. But the fact is this, that all of this certainly is expected to have a huge amount of political impact.
Sure.
And that's why we are seeing this kind of statement coming in at this point in time.
And lastly, the damage it actually does to the community as a whole as well, because in a way it seems, Madhav, he's trying to pitch the male community within Muslims against the female community. The females, of course, fighting for gender equality and justice being done, and he's urging the Muslim men to stand up against UCC.
I think rather than categorizing it as male versus female, I think the categorization that would perhaps be more apt is the traditionalists or the conservatives versus those who are progressive and speak out for the abolishing of triple talaq. We must remember that a number of progressive members of the community, even those who are male, have spoken out in favor of the abolishing of triple talaq, a practice that is completely one-sided and discriminatory against women. So that's the kind of demographic that perhaps Asleen Owaisi is trying to look at, and trying to ensure that those votes really at some level, or those thoughts, or those those feelings are once again fostered by this particular kind of comment that he has made. And that's really the entire reason that he's making this particular comment at this point in time.
Madhav, thanks very much for joining us for the moment.